Hello, my name's Greg Egan, and I'm a social worker that's been in the field since the late 90s in a variety of specialities such as child protection, mental health, disabilities, as well as many other things in the government, private sector, multinationals, and now run my own business. And today I want to talk about the important topic of parental alienation and the psychological impacts that this can cause on a child. And I'm going to use 8 examples of psychological impacts of parental alienation. So let's get into it. So what is parental alienation? In short, parental alienation refers to a situation where a child is manipulated or influenced to reject, fear, or be hostile towards one of their parents, often in the context of high complex divorce or separation, or they are even just kept away from the other parent for no reason at all. And the psychological impacts of parental alienation on children can be significant and long lasting into adulthood. And yes, I'm not talking about those cases where there is real threats of abuse or neglect to the child, or there's severe domestic violence. That is different. As abusive parents or parents that are placing the children at risk need to have supervision orders or restrictive orders in place for them. What I'm talking about is those cases where one parent just decides not to let the other parent have any contact at all with the child, just out of vindictiveness, just being nasty, just because they're pissed off or angry at the other parent. So in that turn, they're punishing the other parent by not letting them have contact with the child. Or sometimes it's just purely around finances. So they figured that if they can keep the child full-time, they might get better payout in the separation. They may be able to maximize child support, for example, if they've got full-time care. And unfortunately, sometimes there's a lot of false allegations that are also thrown out there to try and stop the other parents seeing the children. And in the field of child protection where I've been before, I've had to go out to schools interviewing children only to find out that the children have been manipulated by one parent to say one thing or another against the other parent, all with the game of alienating the child from this other parent and trying to gain full custody, for example. And so what I'm going to look at here is continue to talk about this topic, but I do have some personal examples to give, as well as I'll talk a bit about my professional experience as I go through. So statistics on parental alienation on children in Australia. This one was a hard one for me. I decided to do some Google search to try and find some statistics so we could get a feel for what's actually happening in the Australian system out there. But it doesn't look like there's been a lot of statistics collected. There was some sort of research that was done in 2016, which I've quoted here, where it found that approximately 19% of children going through separation were being alienated against the other parent. But I don't know how accurate or up to date these statistics are, because, or even how much research has been done on this in Australia. And if anyone out there has any good research on this parental alienation statistics in Australia, I'd be extremely interested in hearing about that. And please leave them in the comments below. Now, I did find an article from the UK, though, which was interesting, where it was a study on parental alienation that came out in 2020, where they just sampled 2,000 parents. They just wanted to get a feel for what the statistics came out. And they found that parental alienation was a real issue for about 79% of these participants out of this 2,000 that they randomly sampled. And that 40% of this sample had had no face-to-face time with their children in over 12 months. So that's quite concerning in itself. Now, what this actual report found too was that the impacts on parental alienation, there was impacts on the actual parent too, being alienated from their child. And these included such things as financial insecurity, loss of jobs, selling assets to pay legal fees, constantly moving locations, general health decline, as well as many other issues, including decline in mental health. Because you think of it this way, if you're a parent that's been totally alienated from your child, and you're trying to take it back through the family court, you're trying to argue for custody, you're trying to breach people on orders, that costs money. It costs a lot of bloody money to pay for a lawyer to sit there and fight for you in that court. And if you don't have a lawyer, it can be quite a complex system to navigate. And it can be quite a stressful process, not only on the child, but on the parent as well. And it could lead parents to suicide. It could lead parents to mental health declining, or it could leave them in severe financial hardship just trying to fight for access to their children. Now, parental alienation in this particular report was not considered a gender issue, though, where they found that 56% of men were being alienated and 43% of women were being alienated. So yes, the percentage did lean towards the men, saying that there was more men getting cut off from their children than women, but it was still pretty close there statistically in this sample that they actually did. Now, what they also found that parental alienation affects children of all ages. But the UK report found that older children were usually more likely to be alienated from their parents, with them being easier, I should say, to manipulate with an argument. The child does not want to see their parent. And I'd seen this a lot of times too, where the parents would be making child protection reports or just saying, no, the child's really upset with their parent. They don't want to see them. And that it's abusive to try and force the child to go see their parents. But half the time, well, majority of the time, it's usually that one parent has manipulated the hell out of that child and put them into a bit of a loyalty competition around, if you love me, you won't go to your dad, or if you love me, you won't go to your mum, etc., etc. And even in my own case, I've been completely alienated from my child, and I'll get more into that moving on. And so 91% of these respondents said their children were over the age of 7. That's where that came out. 91% said that their children were over the age of 7. They had children in this group over the age of 7 that were being alienated. And 51% of respondents said children were under the age of 7. So there was a statistical difference of that there was more children over the age of 7 being manipulated or being alienated from the other parent. Now, let's look at just another thing here. Parental alienation can also have a ripple effect. So we're not even getting into the extended family here, like grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunties. When the parent excludes the other parent from the child's life, they're excluding the whole side, whether it's the paternal or the maternal side of the family, from this child's life. So they're cutting off a significant part of this child's life. For example, in my particular case, my ex-wife has kept my 9-year-old son from his sister, who is now 18, his grandparents, myself, and all cousins since the beginning of since it's not the beginning of 2021, that's a typo, since the end of 2021. And there is no child protection risk issues. There is no risk issues at all in my particular case. There's been some false allegations thrown out there, but there was absolutely no risk issues. And even in looking at my own family situation, we are a middle-class people with all sort of middle-class levels of education, university educated, all that sort of stuff, have good jobs, been in government, non-for-profits, done all this sort of different types of work. But still, we're being completely alienated from my son. And this is sad for his sister, who wants to bond with his half brother. And though I have moved out of the area for my own safety issues with my ex-partner, there was no reason to stop me communicating by telephone, by video. It's just pure parental alienation. And unfortunately, many parents face this same situation, and it's only the children that suffer in the long run. Though it may be the other parent's aim to damage the other parent in revenge, they are actually damaging their own child. And I want to point that out because I've seen this a lot in the child protection system, working in child and adolescent mental health and working as a private practitioner. So, is parental alienation against the law? Alienation from a parent generally contradicts one of the fundamental principles of the Australian Family Law Act in 1975. And it says that children have a right to have a meaningful relationship with both of their parents. The right, of course, is in the absence of risk, like I spoke before, risk of concerns of child protection, safety, all that sort of stuff. But presently, the term parental alienation is not recognised or referred to in the Australian Family Law Act. However, the Federal Circuit and Federal Court of Australia has made reference to and made appropriate orders in cases involving parental alienation, including overturning custody, where one parent has been clearly found to alienate the child from the other family side. Because it is child abuse. It's psychologically abusive to alienate the child from another parent. But overall, currently in Australia, parental alienation is not in itself a crime, but I'll be interested to hear from people from other countries like America, England, or just around the world around whether parental alienation is a crime in your country. Because I think it should be. I think if you're openly abusing your child by alienating them from the other parent when there is no logical reason or safety reason to do so, then you are abusing your child. You are psychologically abusing them. And that might be a bit harsh, but that's my view, working in the field I do. And you can challenge me on that if you like and put your comments below. But let's look at some of the common effects of parental alienation and the damage it can do when there is no, and I keep emphasizing this, when there is no child protection or risk issues to withhold contact from the other parent. And so here I'm going to give 8 examples of parental alienation on children. So let's get into the first one, emotional distress. Children subjected to parental alienation often experience emotional distress, including feelings of anger, guilt, sadness, confusion, and anxiety. They may feel torn between their parents and struggle with a sense of loyalty. And like my son would often disclose to me when he was having access with me, all the negative things my ex-wife was saying about me. And you could see he was emotionally struggling with who he should be loyal to when I was seeing him. A child should not have to choose. But my ex-wife made him choose. And eventually when I moved out of the area where I was living, she cut him off from me. And who knows what she's telling him now? She could be telling him that I abandoned him, that I'm not there for him, that I don't want him around, which is all complete crap. But that's what she's potentially telling him. So you look at that. If a parent is telling their child that the other parent doesn't want them around, that the other parent doesn't love them, that the other parent has abandoned them, can you imagine what that's doing to a child's psychology inside growing up, thinking that what's wrong with me because my parents abandoned me, they don't want anything to do with me. What is wrong with me? It's going to cause psychological damage at some point. And this is where I come to the next point, low self-esteem. Parental alienation can undermine a child's sense of self-worth and self-esteem. When they are consistently exposed to negative messages about one parent, they may internalize these beliefs and develop a negative self-image of themselves. I am not worthy of anything. I am just nobody. No one wants me. No one loves me. A lot of negative thoughts can take over. They can think they're completely worthless because they think, well, if my dad or my mum couldn't love me, then maybe I'm not lovable. This is the thing that the other parent is potentially causing to this child when they're alienating them. They're actually giving them this image that this other parent just doesn't want them. And so again, think about the damage that is doing to a child. Three, difficulty trusting others. Now, the manipulation and betrayal experienced in parental alienation can make it challenging for children to trust others, including their own judgment. They may become wary of forming close relationships or struggle with intimacy or attachment. You imagine as a child potentially being told constant lies by one parent or being manipulated by one parent to have a certain perception on life and a view on the other parent. And then the innocent parent tries challenging this narrative with the child. Then who does the child learn to believe if they can't even figure out what is truth and lie between their own parents? If they can't trust their own parents and they can't form that open bond where they know that what's being said is truth from the people that raised them, how are they expected to learn to trust friends, work colleagues, future partners, if they can't even trust their parents? So this can have long-term effects into adulthood, into adult relationships, and including their friendships growing up. Parental rejection, I touched on this earlier. Children may internalize the alienating parent's perspective and reject the target parent. Like whoever is being alienated, the child could turn around and just start rejecting that parent. This can lead to a strained, non-existent relationship with the targeted parent, depriving the child of a loving and supporting bond with that parent who generally loves them, generally cares about them, generally wants them around. But you've got this other parent who's completely told them that, no, that parent doesn't want you. I'm the better one. I'm the loving. I'm the caring one. That person just doesn't want you in their life because they've internalized that view. So they're getting feelings of rejection entering their psyche. And think of that again. They're getting a sense of parental abandonment. They're feeling like they've been abandoned. They're feeling like they're not being wanted. This can have highly damaging effects to the child, as they have, again, feelings of worthlessness, wondering what is wrong with me? Why am I not good enough for the other parent to want me? This is the damage the parent's starting to cause that's alienating that child from the other parent and their side of the family. And from a personal level, I can only imagine what my child's going through, what my son's going through, whilst being alienated from me, his sister, the whole paternal side of the family. And when I did speak to his school teacher, he's just recently, the school teacher said he does struggle with emotional regulation sometimes, and he struggles when he gets rejected by other people within the school grounds, like friendships, social groups, and he becomes emotional when that happens, and it takes him a little while to calm down. Some of these signs and symptoms of the damage that my ex-partner is doing to my child by alienating him from the family could be starting to come through. Identity confusion. Parental alienation can disrupt a child's sense of identity and self. They may struggle to reconcile their feelings for both parents and may question their own beliefs, values, their own sense of self. My question is, how can you form a true identity if you feel like you are constantly having to be two different people for two different parents? And because the parent going out of their way to alienate the child will be using manipulation techniques to create false narratives in their head against the other parent or the other parent's families, to try and alienate them from them, to try and turn them away from that family. It can be quite confusing for a child. Behavioral problems. Children affected by parental alienation may exhibit behavioral issues such as aggression, defiance, withdrawal, or acting out. They may have difficulty regulating their emotions or express their frustration in unhealthy ways. As a therapist, as an ex-child protection worker, I've seen this happen because they get confused, they get upset. They don't know what is truth and lies. They've been cut off by someone they love, someone they care about, or having someone they love's character being slammed, being criticized, being challenged. They're getting this false narrative shoved down their throat. They're an innocent kid being caught up in games being played by one parent. That is damaging to that child growing up because their brain's still developing. Their emotions are still developing. Their ways to regulate their emotions and starting to develop. They need the nourishment of both parents. They need that support of both parents growing up in the two different perspectives. Even if the parents hate each other, it's important that there's some level of cooperation there. Problems with relationships, as I mentioned earlier. This distorted view one parent created by parental alienation can impact on a child's ability to maintain healthy relationships in future. They may struggle with trust, intimacy, emotional connections because of all that manipulation that's gone on by that parent growing up. Because parents are the kids' first mentors and teachers. They learn from us certain life skills. What is positive? What is negative relationships? How to resolve conflict? How to express emotions? How to form attachments, etc. As well as day-to-day life skills. They're learning so much from us. And if we've got one parent being very toxic and alienating this child, what are they learning? So if all they ever seen is a toxic dynamic and a manipulative parent, how are they supposed to learn what a healthy relationship is? It's difficult. And I deal with lots of people and adults trying to heal from that damage that's been done to them in childhood. It's not an easy thing to recover from because they find in adulthood it's now impacting on their relationships. Now, some of the long-term consequences I've already started to touch on. Long-term psychological consequences. If parental alienation persists throughout a child's development, the psychological effects can be long-lasting. It may affect their mental health, leading to depression, anxiety, or even suicidal thoughts, drug use, substance abuse. All this stuff can start taking over this child's life as they're moving through childhood, as they're moving into young adulthood, because of one parent wanting revenge against the other and alienating that child. So please, regardless of how your relationship ended, don't use your child as a weapon against your ex-partner just because you want to hurt your ex-partner, just because you want to get more money out of them. Because in the end, you could be doing long-term damage to your child. And I've seen this in my professional life, the long-term damage it does, seeing multi-generational families and child protection in private practice. And now personally, I am experiencing this parental alienation from my son, with who knows what damage, psychological damage has already been done to him by his mother through these actions, isolating him from me. And just because I'm in a different area, it doesn't mean he can't have video chats with me. It doesn't mean he can't have phone calls with me. It doesn't mean he can't spend holidays with me. But this is pure alienation, with my ex-wife turning around and saying to me, you want access to him, you take me back through court and fight me for it. And yes, some people don't have the financial resources for that. Some people don't have the psychological resilience to go through that process of family court, which is hard. It can lead a parent to suicide, just trying to fight the system. And then what happens to that child? They've now lost one parent because one parent was vindictive and wanted to alienate that child. So I am emotionally distressed by that. Over a year and a half, no contact with my son. My parents have not seen him. His sister has not seen him. His cousins have not seen him. His aunts and uncles have not seen him. All because of someone wanting to be vindictive and cut a child off from his family. Here's some points I just want to raise on your partner alienating you from your children of previous relationships. I just wanted to make a quick note of this at the end, because sometimes we enter relationships with people that have been separated, people that have children of their own, people that may have their kids every second weekend and stuff like that, or may have them as the primary carer. If you're going to enter a relationship with someone with children, do not play this game in reverse. Do not try and sabotage those relationships. Do not try and separate them from their child, because you are doing damage to someone else's child. You are doing damage to your partner's child by putting pressure on them not to see their child, putting pressure on them not to have a positive relationship with their ex-partner. This is doing nothing but damage. Just because the child's not biologically yours, don't do it, because you are doing damage to a child. In short, if you enter a relationship with someone that has children, remember, their children are part of the package. In entering a relationship with them, you are also taking on the responsibility as a step parent. So do your best to make this work, and don't sabotage the relationship between your partner and their children, or try to alienate them from their kids, or you'll be causing similar damage to the children, as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, but you'll also be damaging your partner. You'll also be causing a lot of emotional distress and hardship to your partner. If you don't want to be in a relationship with someone with kids, then don't be, rather than causing problems for those children already working through the separation of their parents. And this personal example, and I've touched on it earlier, like my ex-wife, who has a lot of narcissistic personality traits, was an abusive partner, was extremely controlling, domestic violence relationship that I managed to escape from, did everything in her power in the beginning of that relationship and throughout that relationship to alienate me from my daughter, who was now 18, when she entered the relationship with me. From doing things like pretending to be me, writing to my ex through text messages, from my phone, from email, causing problems. Psychologically abusing me, using various forms of psychological manipulation to break apart the relationship between me and my daughter. And generally treated my daughter with cold detachment when she did see her on the odd occasion. Today, when my daughter is now 18, she talks about the fact that she was scared of my ex-wife and just felt generally treated like she did not want her around. And she didn't. My ex-wife used to openly say, I don't want her around. She reminds me of your past relationship. I don't want to hear. If you bring her around, I'm going to love you less. If you bring her around, I'm going to leave you. Constant threats of separation, verbal abuse, silent treatment. I copped all this every time I wanted to see my daughter. This separation in the relationship between me and my daughter was heartbreaking. I would sometimes just sit in my car, break down in tears, and even talking about it now, I can just feel myself starting to well up. The pain I went through. And even when I tried to express this pain to my ex-partner, she didn't care, because it was all about meeting her needs and trying to separate that relationship between me and my child. But luckily, me and my daughter have repaired a lot of that, but still there's work to be done. And now, even as counter revenge, my ex-wife is now isolating my son from his sister and extended family, doing it in reverse, using children as weapons. It's heartbreaking. Don't do it to your partner. You're going to cause them mental health issues. You're going to cause them to become psychologically distressed. You're going to damage another kid. Like, even when I separated from my first partner, I had a great relationship. We were fine. We separated, done all the paperwork, all within about 3-6 months, done and dusted. And we had a good relationship until my ex-wife got involved and started causing problems and started doing everything in her power to sabotage it. So I wanted to put this at the end of it, because I want to say, do not enter a relationship with someone with kids unless you're willing to take on that responsibility, whether you're and you're willing to accept them as part of your family. Because when you enter a relationship with someone that already has kids, they're a package. Accept them as a package and don't try and sabotage it. And if you've got problems, work through them, try and talk through them. Attend family therapy, whatever you have to do. But don't just sabotage the relationship, because you'll be no better than the person that's deliberately alienating their child from their other partner. In conclusion, it's important to note that not all the children exposed to parental conflict or parental alienation have the same severity of impact on them, as it can vary. Like, different children have got different personalities, they've got different levels of resilience. So the impact that this parental alienation on is going to vary in different forms. But parental intervention, professional interventions such as counselling or therapy, can be beneficial in helping a child to cope with the psychological effects of parental alienation and work towards healing and building a healthier relationship. Unfortunately, the family court process is, as I mentioned earlier, costly and a long drawn-out process, which a lot of parents cannot afford or just cannot do due to a decline in their own mental health fighting the system. And by the time it is solved, the damage has been done and it's going to take time to heal. And finally, don't hurt your children. And I'm re-emphasizing this, don't hurt your children just to get back at your ex-partner. If they've been nothing but a good father, a good parent, a good mother during the relationship to the children, there is no reason to cut them off because you are hurting your children. And I have put some links, which I'll put in the description. And if you like these sort of videos, hit like, please subscribe. And if you have any questions on this topic, or you got comments to make or your own stories to tell, please leave your comments below. I'd be very interested to hear them and for you to share your different experiences that you've had of parental alienation, because I want to raise awareness of this topic and help parents out there know that they're not alone. Again, thank you for listening.